Epic drop.
Cause the moves we putting on them is amazing.
Look at my fancy footwork, look at my fancy footwork, look at my fancy look at my fancy footwork.
Welcome. This is Scott Callahan from the Aesthetic Dish, and this is the final finale episode of the Aesthetic Dish, episode 10, all things PDO Threads. And tonight I have the honor of hosting the West Coast Best of PDO Thread providers. These are some of the very, very top providers on the West Coast. No one does it like they do, and I'm so happy to have them on my show. To begin with, I want to first of all welcome you guys, and I have lots of questions for you, and I'm sure our audience does as well. To start off with, we'll start off at the top there with Yvonne Dellos. Yvonne Dellos, nurse practitioner from Utah from Medical Aesthetic Art Institute. So welcome, Yvonne. And next after that is we have Francine Young, who's from Newport Beach, Beverly Hills. Francine is the owner of Francine Queen of Threads and is a co-owner and KOI of HealMD. She is a KOI also of Novathread. Welcome, Francine.
Thank you.
Dr. Tsay, again from Tustin, California, top 100 injector, KOI for Mint and Miracu, Galderma trainer, and the trainer for Endolift. Celebrity MD on Bling Empire. Welcome, TJ.
Thank you.
Dr. Kian Karimi, who's a double board certified head, neck, facial plastic surgeon, founder of Rejuva Medical Aesthetics and HealMD, and from Beverly Hills, LA. Welcome, Dr. Karimi.
California love.
Next, we have Gideon Kwok, who is also from California. He is a co-owner of Skin Perfect Medical, as well as the Aesthetic Immersion, KOI for Mint and Miracu. Welcome, Dr. Kwok.
Good.
Next is Jessie Cheung. Dr. Cheung is a dermatologist, regenerative aesthetic expert from Chicago, New York City. She's featured in Men's Health Magazine, Real Self, and has been on the show Vice. She's a KOI for Mint and Miracu. Welcome, Dr. Cheung.
Hey.
And lastly is Pawnta Abrahimi, who is a nurse from Beverly Hills and in New York and Dubai. She is a trainer for Allergan Galderma. She is a KOI for Miracu, as well as multiple other companies. Welcome, Pawnta.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. So this is a exclusive VIP group, and I'm so excited to get into this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just jump around a little bit, but and I want to get to some questions, but what we're talking about first of all is PDO Threads. So Yvonne, we'll do this quickly and we'll get into this quick answers. Yvonne, tell me what PDO Threads are for our audience.
So polydioxanone, it's a sugar thread that Scott, the one and only, has actually brought me into the thread fold and taught me everything I know for the most part. So we know that these sutures have been used for many years in surgical procedures, specifically cardiothoracic procedures. And really, it's just a sugar molecule that will eventually be dissolved in the tissue.
And Dr. Kwok, how long have you been doing PDO Threads for?
Oh man, I've known about PDO Threads for probably 12 years, but probably started playing around with them 6-7 years ago. Right? About 6-7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. It's been a whirlwind, but yeah, it's been fun.
Okay. Dr. Karimi, how did you get into PDO Threads?
So I was kind of introduced the threads in 2014 and thought about it for a while, and then actually met with another plastic surgeon whose 50% of her practice was PDO threads in the non-surgical realm. And that really opened my eyes to what PDO threads are. So that was in 2015. So it's been about 8 years.
Okay. And Pawnta, you use multiple brands of threads. You're using just to reiterate, you have Mint, Miracu, PDO Maxx, and you use Novathread, right? You use all 4 of those brands?
I have, yes, but mostly I'm using Miracu now.
Okay, all right. And Dr. Cheung, you've been using threads for a long time as well. What's the number one way that you're using threads with your patients?
Do you mean like vectoring or where I'm putting them?
What areas, where are you putting them?
Well, the face is going to be the most common. Everyone hates their jowls or their cheeks, and so it's always going to be mid-face and lower face, which will help the neck too indirectly.
Francine, you're well known for your use of smooth threads and mono threads. Again, where did you start doing threads, and why is it that you like those smooth threads so much?
I tell a story all the time. I was at an aesthetic conference and I saw a plastic surgeon give a talk about threads, and I thought, that's what I want to do in life. So I had been an injector for probably over 7 years at that time, because I started doing threads. I think it's almost been 6 or 7 years now. And I started just taking training after training after training, and then sort of developed, Kian and I have developed our own kind of techniques, as everybody is. Dr. Tsay, Gideon, I know you guys, your techniques very well. Everybody has an amazing technique. Everybody here on the panel is just like, I'm really honored actually to be on the panel with you guys, because I admire everybody, all of your work. I think you guys are all amazing. I started my PDO journey, and I just, you know what I love? I love beautiful skin. That's sort of my thing. I love when patients have glowing, gorgeous skin. And I think that's one of the reasons why Sculptra is getting this kind of new birth as it is right now. And what I found with the small mono threads is that that's what it gave you. It gave you beautiful skin. So anywhere you had skin, you could use it. And it's also kind of cool for the gram, right? So when you're using so many as well.
Yeah.
That was sort of my genesis.
And Dr. Tsay, again, you use PDO threads in very unique ways. Specifically, you're well known for your use of threads in the nose. And also, you've been combining PDO threads with a new procedure called Endolift. If you can talk about both of those.
Yeah, so I actually took my first thread course with Dr. Kian Karimi back in 2015. I still remember the class, and I took my mom as a model. I went home, and then for the first year, I just felt like I just sucked. I was terrible. I was not good at it at all. Not your fault, Dr. Karimi. I just needed to mature and develop. And as I got more support, and then Mint came along and just hammered the training and support, and their Korean doctors came here and added more training and support, and then I felt more comfortable and better. And so that's my journey, how I started with threads. And then I saw Endolift back in 2020. It was a fiber optic cable, 1470 nanometer laser, size of a pho noodle or angel hair pasta. And I wanted something minimally invasive to tighten the skin. I already had RF microneedling and regular RF, but I saw this and the results were just mind-blowing. And I was cross-shopping like FaceTite, Renuvion, but I wanted this because it's very minimally invasive. I'm not a surgeon, but there's no scarring, there's no incisions. And so the fiber optic cable goes and just shrink wraps the whole skin. And then I use the threads to redrape. And that has been my cream of the crop combination treatment that for the patients that can swallow that. It's the two packaged together are amazing together.
Great. Yvonne, so you've been in multiple things with me, where you've been to Dolce Symposiums, you've been to the Benev X Class Summit. You run your own conference now called MAAI Summit. The next one's in August 23rd to 25th in 2024. But the one thing that you kind of stand out for is that you're basically a big advocate of ultrasound. You're going to be teaching the Face It Live in Cambridge, Massachusetts on ultrasound anatomy. Are you using ultrasound when you're performing PDO threads with patients now?
I love that you bring that up, Scott, because I originally trained with Stella on ultrasounds when she first launched her training. I think I was in her second class. And I remember leaving there thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I just felt like this was, I mean, yes, we are very capable of picking up a new skill and learning something new, but I have a longtime friend, Candace Derry, which you know. We've been friends for 19 years, and I called her. She's been doing sonography for over 12 years. And I said, hey, listen, there's this huge thing coming into our industry, ultrasound and aesthetics. I think this would be perfect for you. So, long story short, I said, just start a business and I'll send business to you because you know this better than I do. And then I'll heavily rely on you. That's kind of how this all started. And so I do have the Clarius, I have the portable. I will be waiting for my accountants, but I will be buying the Mindray for the clinic. But I need to use it more with threads. I am not great at seeing the thread. I need practice with that. So I do heavily rely on Candace to guide me a little bit. And it's nice because we can do it virtually. But I still rely on Doppler. So I will tell you, I need more practice with that. But I did have the privilege of lecturing on it, and I got Candace to lecture with me because I just felt like her expertise, I can learn from her. And you know me, I'm very transparent, very honest. I'll never stand up and pretend that I'm something I'm not. And I'm still in the learning phase of ultrasound.
Dr. Kwok, you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have 8 Skin Perfect medical clinics. Is that correct? 8?
Yeah.
So that's Breda, Costa Mesa, Vendora, Lancaster, Rancho Cucamonga, Whittier, and West Hollywood. Is that, I get them all?
Berlin Heights.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in all of these locations, you know, obviously you guys are all doing lots of thread lifting. What's the majority of the threads? Which company are the majority of the threads that you're using on your patients?
I use a combination of Mint and Miracu. Those are probably the majority of what I use for at least the lifting aspects of it. The smooth threads, I think any company, for the most part, at the end of the day, I think if it's reasonably priced, and use the smooth threads. So I think I played with mints. I played with Violas. So there's a lot of different companies as far as the smooth threads are concerned. But for the majority of the lifting, the barb threads, Mint and Miracu.
The reverse vectors that you're using, you had this unique zip tie element where you put the reverse threads in. Where'd you get this idea from? You know, and
so that I would have to give credit to Dr. Reddy Smith down in South Africa. I was watching a Mint webinar, just happened to the team happened to send it to me, and I just happened to be free in between patients. And she was talking about just doing it for the eyebrows, and I was kind of looking at it as like, ooh, that, you know, how does that really work? Does it, you know, understanding the whole process of actually placing it in here, and I started playing with it, was kind of iffy about it. And then for some reason I started thinking about it for the rest of the face, and the rest is history as far as really playing around with it through the rest of the face. And I think it works really well just to tie in everything once you've lifted.
Great.
So
Dr. Karimi, so you're a very well-known head, neck, and facial plastic surgeon. You're a rhinoplasty expert. You've been on the Doctor Show. You're the LA Kings plastic surgeon. You're on the LMCA conference. You speak fluent in Spanish and Farsi, and you're Persian, right? You're originally from Tehran, right? I get all that right?
Originally from Indianapolis, but family is from Tehran. Yes.
Tehran. Okay. Yep. And also, just to that, are you currently the medical director of Cosmo France still?
Yes, and Novathreads.
Yeah, and Novathreads. And you developed the Easy Gel, the biofiller?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done a lot of things. You're an excellent source of expertise. Now the PDO thread industry out there in the world, you know, there's a lot of criticism from plastic surgeons and dermatologists about PDO threads, and I know you're a big advocate of PDO threads, but you're a guy that's unusual because you can perform facelifts and neck lifts and rhinoplasties on patients as an alternative to doing threads. So how did you become such a big advocate of threads? How did you defend threads, to your industry? I know I'm guessing you're getting some criticism sometimes from plastic surgeons. So if you can just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Scott, I've been having tomatoes thrown at me for many years at my conferences and still do. I think my eyes were open again when I met with this plastic surgeon who was able to do all the things that I do and utilizing threads. And the way that I've always spoken about threads and the way that I present it to my patients is that it really is an injectable that allows us to do things that other injectables don't allow us to do. Temporarily reposition soft tissues or the midface, the lower third, boost the skin. I mean, when I do a facelift, I remove skin, but I'm not actually improving the skin quality. And so it is something to me that makes a lot of sense as long as it's, done the right way, for the right patient with reasonable expectations. We combine the threads a lot with fillers, with neurotoxins, with biostimulators, with easy gel, PRF, all of it. And we have such an amazing happy threads practice between, myself, Francine, Natalia Guzman, and all of my kind of, disciples. And it's kind of a no-brainer to me. The whole conversation, with criticism of plastic surgeons. Plastic surgeons have criticized everything that's ever come to market that isn't plastic surgery, starting from Botox to fillers. There was a huge uproar against hyaluronic acid fillers when they first came out in the United States, primarily from the plastic surgery community in 2003. So it's nothing new. And I think, Scott, you posted about this and others have posted about this, but every kind of new type of technology, even though threads really aren't new anymore, has met resistance. Plastic surgeons, a lot of, everybody has their agenda, right? And I feel like a lot of my colleagues who have never even placed a thread, they'll criticize you that you've never picked up a scalpel, but a lot of the ones that are the loudest against threads have never picked up a thread. And so it's a two-way street. And it's easy to self-promote. It's easy to fear-monger, which unfortunately is happening now to the public and to our patients, both current and prospective. And I think forums like these are important to talk to ethical and responsible providers like all of us that are on here to talk about what threads can and can't do. And I can tell you again, in summary, as a plastic surgeon, that PDO threadless have never complicated a facelift for me. Obviously I'm not going to go in, 6 to 8 weeks after Francine has done 100 threads in someone's face. So timing is important, just like with anything else when it comes to surgery. And I think that it's not only our threads here to stay, but the efficacy of them, the safety of them, and the popularity of them will continue to rise. And it just takes, thought leaders like us to continue to push the envelope.
My next question is to Pawnta. Pawnta, again, you're well known in the sense that you've been at Miracu Med Spa, you work at Skin Spirit and other med spas. You're top 100 injector. You're a big Allergan Galderma trainer and a big KOI for Mint and Miracu. But I think the thing that pushes it is obviously that you have a lot of celebrity patients. You're doing threads on those patients. You advocate that on Instagram, and these trends of thread procedures, such as like a fox eye or cat eye or a procedure like that, becomes instantly famous the second you say that you do it. So when you're with those celebrity patients and you're talking to them, how do you get into those conversations with them about threads? Do they know about threads? Is it something you're introducing to them?
So just like with everything else, they take out their phone and bring the Instagram and the filter and all the Instagram pictures with the threads and the fox eye. And you really have to sit down and educate them. And as long as they have realistic expectation and you're spending time with them from the beginning, then I really don't have any issues for them to understand. But when they come in, most of them, it's just they're following the trend. They want to come in and get the fox eye or the cat eye, and they don't know that that's just that picture taken right after. And, the thread, we didn't even bring the thread down yet, and they take that picture. And it's just, realistically, you have to explain to them and show them your before and after pictures and tell them that that's just for IG. So that's, I just have to talk to them and educate them, and everything is fine. And all my thread patients are happy because of that first consultation and educating them about it.
Sure.
And to continue with your last question for Dr. Karimi, the same plastic surgeons, and you know, they're next to me, they're all in Beverly Hills, and we hear their patients come to me, I see them. And I agree with Dr. Karimi, they have not touched a thread. They don't even know about thread. And these are the same plastic surgeons performing surgery on 35-year-old and 40-year-old patients. Now it's a new trend that they come in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm getting ready for my facelift. My doctor in Beverly Hills, I'm like, how? Like, you're 35 and you're getting ready for your your facelift, and your doctor is encouraging this. So these are the ethics that these plastic surgeons have when they put down the thread. And we're just we're taking away from their business, I think, because it's going to prolong that surgery. And I think that first surgery that the patients will have, it will never be like the first time. That first lift that you get, okay, what are you going to do when you're 45 and 50? You're going to have that second plastic surgery, the third plastic surgery. So I really talk to them and educate them and really, tell them what it's about. I mean, at 35, you don't get a facelift. So that's the new trend now.
Okay.
35 having a facelift.
That's good. And I've seen that trend. Dr. Cheung, you're a great thread provider. I've seen you in action. You're a very interesting person because not only are you a great thread provider in the sense that you're a KOI for Mint and Miracu, but you're so well spoken about sexual wellness and about bioidentical hormones and peptides, and you're a big advocate of that. With both of those things, with the threads, are there any applications for threads in sexual wellness that you currently use or you foresee being used in the future?
So I actually do vaginal virginization with threads, not a commonly requested procedure because it is kind of hardcore, but something that I can do. I also have laser devices to do that, to make the vagina tighter, more elastic. So it's part of my practice, not a huge part. Do I put threads in penises? I haven't needed to do that, or in butts either, but I would say vagina labia is one thing for plumping. You could do fillers or smooth threads, but we actually use barbed threads around the introitus to help to kind of tighten that opening.
And what threads are you using for that?
So that's it's used by double needle. They look like little curved, like the needles are little curved needles. Actually, one's from Italy for that. They're actually made specifically, like the curve of the needle kind of matches the ring of the vagina.
Wow, that's interesting. All right, let's move on. So Francine, again, one of my all-time favorite.
My hat's off to you, Doc. You're a gangster.
I'm a little crazy.
I'm not even on your level.
Missing all your sexual wellness patients to Dr. Cheung moving forward.
Yes.
So Francine, so again, you're a big person. When I was doing your bio review, and there's so much stuff there, from the Galderma gain trainer to an ambassador of Novathreads, KOI of Novathreads, KOI of HealMD, KOI of many other things. And then obviously your faculty in LMCA, Med Spa and Mastery. And the other interesting thing is that you're on the Galderma Gen Now board, right? So you're doing that as well. So you're out there, you're doing a lot of great stuff. When I started looking at HealMD, this is something I was unfamiliar with. I guess this is both you and Dr. Karimi are involved in this. It's like a CBD product for bruising, swelling, pain relief, etc. Do you use HealMD, or do you use Easy Gel, or do you use any of these other things that like PRP or other things in combination with threads in any way, shape, or form?
Yes. So I think that's a really interesting question, because we can kind of see the trends of aesthetic changing a little bit, where these keywords like biostimulation, anti-aging, peptides, all these sort of things are buzzwords, and patients are really getting to an interest in that, doing the PRF, doing threads, because these are all biostimulators. So yes, I don't do a lot of Easy Gel just because I'm a solo practitioner. So it's very time consuming for me. You have to have, I think you need help. Otherwise it takes quite a bit of time. And most of my practice is, I would say, anywhere from 50 to 60% of my practice is threads. The rest is injectables. And I do some amount of lasers, but not very many. So my time is spent mostly in that. But I do, like I said, I do a lot of threads. I like doing actually a lot of microneedling radiofrequency with exosomes. I like doing a lot of that, stem cells and things of that nature. So I'll do some PRF for patients who request that. And I like them to be a little bit younger because I think that the mesenchymal cells are a little bit more productive when they're younger. When you start getting up there in age, I tend to think that they're not as productive. So those are sort of my go-tos, definitely. And Sculptra, I love Sculptra.
And let's say in terms of healing process after your procedures, does the Heal MD or the Easy Gel or any, does that help heal afterwards?
Definitely. So if you're going to disrupt that skin, that epidermis, so a lot of people will use exosomes on the top. You can use PRF as well. So all those things I think are really beneficial. Whenever I'm doing, for instance, like a microneedling, I will make a concoction of neurotoxin. Might do some exosomes. I might do some HAs. I might do some I'll actually use the tincture, especially if they have acne or rosacea. I will use the Heal MD. There's a tincture. There's a whole line of products. So there's creams, there's CBD and arnica, obviously for bruising and discomfort. And then there's another tincture that there's flavors and non-flavors that you can apply directly to the skin. And when you microneedle it in, it'll actually act very similar to the efficacy of Accutane and help really disrupt that pattern of it'll decrease sebaceous acne outbreaks, it'll decrease sebum, it'll decrease inflammation. So it's actually, I think Dr. Karimi has a study out as well, or it's coming out, but it works really wonderfully for cystic acne. So someone who's having an active breakout, you can use that CBD combination as well with neurotoxin and microneedle that into the skin, and you will see beautiful results for, again, active cystic acne.
Very interesting. Dr. Tsay, I have to admit this, but I love watching Bling Empire, and I've seen you on Bling Empire, and I know that you discuss with that cast, threads and the other procedures that you have. Do you think that what you've done on Bling Empire or some of the other shows you have, do you think that that's set some thread trends? Do you think that you get a lot of patients from your exposure on those shows?
So I did do a barb thread on Kane, and up until then, I've only seen someone get some smooth threads done, I think on some other reality TV show or some other show. But anyways, I think this is the first time I've seen use barb threads on someone. And so the fact that it's taken this long to actually show up on mainstream television says that we're still very early. I mean, if you go to we were just at the Benev conference and we had a raise of hands who's using threads, and it was just a third of the audience. And I'm like, we're still very, very early in the penetration. I think to say it's saturated, it's far from saturated. I think there's still a big market penetration still to be had. And I think that's why there's so many companies that are jumping on the bandwagon and they're repackaging threads, etc. And so it's going to continue to grow. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to continue to grow, and we're getting more and more media attention. And I think as long as we're all together, even you guys represent all the different brands out there, but as long as we continue to elevate the industry, we're going in the right direction.
Yvonne, when you're doing PDO threads on patients, sometimes, the people watch the videos or they see the threads and it looks like they're very painful. How do you keep your patients comfortable performing threads on your patients?
We get asked this a lot. I really, really believe as providers, our energy influences our patients. If we are calm and collected and we communicate with them and we give them expectations and we appropriately numb them, they do just fine. But if you're an uptight, antsy, anxious person yourself, your patients are going to be the same way. So for the most part, it's very tolerable. I really don't use a lot of numbing for my patients. I don't do the cannula and flood tracks. I actually just numb the entry and the exit, and then maybe a few in between. But for the most part, they do just fine. I'm not doing as many as Francine, though. I will say that. But my patients do fine.
And do you ever use Pronox with your patients?
I don't.
Okay. All right. Gideon, this is for you, Dr. Kwok. this is kind of a weird question, but I know that you're the one that can answer it. So the
Thanks.
concept or the thought out there, so when you put PDO threads into patients, that the thread itself is fully resorbed within some sort of time frames, 8 to 12 weeks, let's say, and that this thread was made of sugar, it resorbs into the body. And the concept that is that helicollagen forms around the thread, and it's this helicollagen that essentially is like a spring that holds the patient's face into place. Is this the way you understand it, or is it something different?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how we understand it. I think that, I think it's going to take newer research. I think there are certain research that shows, probably the uptick in collagen probably is between your 12-week all the way up into probably 6 months, and then probably starts to thin out a little bit. I think you get a little bit more thin fibrous capsule, as far as probably closer into the 48-week, but there is documentation that there is that fibrous capsule, or you could say it's scar tissue, you could say it's collagen out through a year out. So I think placement of the threads really do. There was a concept out in that were actually, when I was at the Mint Summit recently by Dr. Song, and the newer trends within Korea is actually to crisscross and do a lot more crossing foundationally wise, and she should be having a study coming out soon is where the actual threads cross. She actually sees a 5 times uptick in collagen production where that is. So if you actually go back to the Koreans, they're actually showing a lot more crisscrossing to actually show more foundational structure to that mimics a little bit more of maybe ligamentous type of holds and stuff like that. So look out for that type of research coming out from her. So I definitely think that there is collagen that gets stimulated, and how you utilize it by your vectorings and things like that do make a difference.
Dr. Karimi, again, you're a big advocate for Novathreads, and I know that they have these certain molded threads that have come out recently. There's the Infinity Plus threads, and there's the Beyond threads. When I read about this, because I've never used either of them, but essentially the Infinity Plus comes as 21 gauge, 18 gauge, comes in different lengths, 90, 60, and 100 millimeter. Beyond is 18 gauge, 100 millimeter thread. Have you used, first of all, do you use these threads on your patients? How do they compare to other threads that are out there that you tried from other companies? What are certain advantages of those threads in your mind, let's say, beyond other companies?
So I just want to touch on the last question as well, because there's a really good histological paper that I often present showing that at 12 weeks, actually, there's a dermal fibrous bridging effect from the thread to the dermis. So it actually, even though it's placed subcutaneously, it throws up little strings of microfibrosis and stimulates the fibroblasts. So you get this amazing bridging to the dermis, and that's part of how it's kind of locks it into place and how you get the longevity of the threads. So that was something that was really interesting. The study from Paul Lawrence, actually a plastic surgeon from New York, he used Vectra to look at how many millimeters of change there were after a thread lift. Then it was a very basic thread lift, no reverse vector, like 3 threads down the face. And all of his patients had more of a lift at 12 weeks than they had at 4 weeks. And I think that dermal fibrous bridging effect really helps with that. So I just wanted to
Awesome.
piggyback on that answer. The second question you asked about Novathread. So actually, the Beyond thread was born because of how aggressive Francine is threads, and Francine and I are actually responsible for the development of new threads in Novathreads. And so, Francine and I have been working together, training together, and we were doing these reverse vectors. And we tried all the threads. I've used a lot of Mint threads in the past. I haven't used a ton of Miracu, but I've tried lots of different brands. And one of the shortcomings was the fact that we didn't have a long thread that had really heavy molded barbs across the whole thread. So the Beyond thread is not your beginner's thread, in my opinion. It is, I would say, I think the thickest thread on the market. It's molded all around the thread itself, and that the molds go all the way to the end. So there's very little portion of the thread that is without any molded barbs. And that's because Francine and I are now utilizing the entire length of the thread, like many of the experts on this panel are, to have an anchor portion, which I love as a surgeon, to have an anchor, and then to have a lift portion. And you can use it with a reverse vector. You can come in, you can go back out, you can recannulate, and that thing is so sticky. I mean, literally, like when I do a facelift, I love doing these videos. I push the cheek down and you can't anymore. The same thing with the Beyond Threads. We go into the deep temporal fascia, anchor the mid face, and I manually cannot even bring the face down off of those threads. So again, there's a lot of great threads brands out there, and I think all of the ones that we're all speaking about are very high quality. But that's kind of the difference of the Beyond Thread with others.
Dr. Cheung, have you experimented with PCL, PLA, or PMA threads from any of the companies? I know like La Cree has some of those threads, and there's other brands outside of the PDO type.
So besides PDO, I mean, I worked with Contour Threads back in 2006. Those are permanent threads. They got taken off the market. I've used the Silhouettes PGLA, but I haven't done PCL or HA yet. They keep on calling me and asking, but I'm like, send me some samples. They just haven't gotten any.
I do want to just comment, Scott, and before anybody kind of throws themselves under the bus here, the PCL, to my knowledge, is not FDA approved at all. And so I don't want anybody, a lot of us are kind of, try things and whatnot. But just because we're doing a Zoom here, I just want to make that clear, unless one of you has information that I don't have on PCL.
No,
has anyone for the PCL? I haven't.
Lesson Crest says they say they have a PCL thread, and Dr. Kwok, you can chime in. I think one of your providers is a trainer for Lesson Crest. They said they had a PCL barb thread. As far as I know, they're not FDA approved, but they claim they are. But I don't know what the real facts are from Lesson Crest. I doubt it.
Yeah, I never really asked her about the PCL thread. So yeah.
Okay.
That being said, worldwide, I mean, there is a tremendous experience with PCLs. Just because it's not FDA approved doesn't mean it's not useful, effective, and something that will be introduced to our market. But we're kind of at the mercy of what we're allowed to do.
I know. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Francine, do you perform PDO threads on the body?
Yes, I do. A lot less, to be honest, because I'm such a big sculpture user, but I do like threads for certain parts. Most of the time I'm going to use smooth threads because usually it's a skin quality integrity issue. Now, if you're talking about lifting, I've done crazy things like lift breasts and things like that. I don't find it very helpful in knees. I don't find it in lifting thighs. I don't find it very helpful in lifting abdomens. It's just too high of a mobile area to really last. And I don't want to give patients a false kind of a sense that it's going to last a long time. There's just too much mobility in those areas. And there's other products that I think do a better job than threads. I think you need to use threads and anchor them in an area where you don't have a lot of mobility. That way they're going to last you a lot longer. That's kind of where you bring in that concept of using neurotoxin and things of that nature in order to make your threads last longer, because you're trying to hinder a lot of that micro movement and the motion so that you can make those threads last longer. Breasts are kind of interesting because I've actually had really nice success with everting nipple position, which sounds kind of strange and painful, and you have to numb very well for that area. But I have had nice results. You have to be, of course, careful if the patient has implants and things of that nature. Patients with very large breasts or heavy breasts or pendulous breasts, not very successful. Again, has to do with the fact that you're asking too much of strings to lift such a heavy weight. But if you're what I tell patients is I'm not going to lift the entire breast, but I might give you a little bit of a nipple eversion. And some patients just want that. For whatever reason, they're not ready to have a full-on breast surgery, and just thought, I'm happy, Francine, if you could just give me a little, that way when I wear a shirt, especially if someone who has smaller breasts, but maybe the areola and the nipple position is a little off, if you can just kind of give it some equality and just make it even, patients are very happy. So having a realistic expectation when you're doing threads with body work is extremely important.
Scott, I apologize. I'm gonna have to excuse myself because I have to help my wife take care of our three children. It's about near their bedtime. Thank you so much for putting this together, and look forward to watching the rest of this. And I love the fact that you're collaborating, all of us, and it's not, an easy task. And I know we all, face a lot of noise, but I love being in a Zoom, in a room with amazing threaders. And as Francine always says, it's not the thread, it's the threader. And I really do believe that. So thank you guys very much for having me on this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kian.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
So I'll move on to Dr. Tsay. So Dr. Tsay, the question I have for you is that when you're doing the threads on your patients, what areas do you think that you get the best results in terms of, like, say, face and body? What areas are every time it's just a wow factor, like you just can't believe the results?
I do very little body. I kind of share with Francine. It's just the anchoring. There's a high mobility, and most of the patients that want the body stuff, they're just too big. I mean, they're obese. They're not good candidates. So, and I tell people will sign up for a thread class and they want to do like the butt right away or the neck right away. And I'm like, start something simple. Like, start, like, 90% of your requests are going to be mid lower face. Start there. When we're learning fillers, the first place we inject fillers is not the tear trough, right? It's the nasolabial fold. It's the lips. It's something very easy, not the neck, not the butt. So start with the mid face, do some lower face, practice, get better, and then refine your skills, and then kind of expand. The nose, I love the nose, and I didn't do nose till later. In fact, I was a little skeptical at first, but then once I started doing it, my mind was blown. And then the fact that there was such low complications, super high satisfaction rates, I became a believer, and then I continued to develop new techniques for the nose, and I still love the nose. So face, mid face, nose lifting with the ptotic tip, lifting that, it's just beautiful. I think it's just amazing.
Pawnta, like I said, you use all the different company brands, and so you're a good person to answer this question. The Miracu threads, which are basically the Elastiline, Forte threads, and the Forte fixes, what stands out about those threads for you? You said, like, Miracu is your favorite thread. What stands out about those threads in comparison to the other brands that you use? Why is it that Miracu thread is the one that you use the most?
I feel like it lasts much longer on my patients because I have used other threads, and the Miracu fix now with the reverse vectors that you fix. I mean, there's nothing like it. It's amazing results. And then of course the Elastiline for the joweling, I use that a lot. Really, there's no company like it. There's mint fines kind of compared to the Fortes, but the Elastiline and the fixes are amazing as far as thread quality and how long it's going to last with my patients. I have tested the other threads, like, there's a company that I work for that only it's a corporate, so I have to only use their threads, and it doesn't last as long.
To the next,
at all.
next question for that, I know a lot of the companies, they come in as sealed packages, and when you open that seal, essentially it kind of oxidizes the thread. They're moving thereafter. There are some companies like Miracu has individually sealed threads. How do you, let's say you're opening up those other companies' packages, how do you handle the thread? What do you do with the thread essentially that you didn't use? And how long would that thread last for before, you couldn't use it anymore?
Well, with the other companies, I mean, even when you open that new package and you put it in, I mean, it just pulls off, compared to the Miracu and the other ones, because I don't know if it's the way they cut it or the way it is, but it just does not last like Miracu and mint.
Right. Yvonne, so many of the companies that are out there now have been pushing this concept that molded threads are better than cutting threads. We know now that Miracu has molded threads. Novathread now has the molded threads with their two new brands, the Affinity Plus and the PDO Maxx. also has molded threads that they've released. They have a molded Levo Max, a PDO Max dual molded, and a Levo lock molded. Mint has molded threads. Have you had any experience with cutting threads versus molded threads? Do you think it is true that molded threads do last longer or do lift more so than the cutting threads?
So when I first trained, I actually trained with Miracu threads in, I want to say it was like early January, February of 2019. And so my experience, I was actually a little intimidated because they were so robust and I didn't have the best training. So I was intimidated to pick them up. Then you introduced me to Mint, and I felt very confident with Mint threads. The color coordinated, easy to use. I could understand what I was doing. And then it was the blunt tip cannula. So after getting very comfortable and confident with that product, I went back to Miracu with you, of course, and felt much more confident. They are much stronger, especially the Elastiline, but I have not had experience with cut threads, mostly because of what I've been taught, and then from what I've read in the books, that they just don't have the durability. And you know, your patients are spending a lot of money and they're trusting you. So we have that responsibility to provide them with the best service and the result that they're seeking. And so if we use a product that's going to give them a minimal result where they're going to have to come back in for a boost, I think that's doing a disservice to our patients.
Dr. Kwok, what stands out from a lot of the West Coast PDO thread providers is there's a lot of focus on reverse vectors. When you're doing reverse vectors, what threads specifically are your favorite to do that? And does the length matter? Do you want a longer thread or a shorter thread when doing reverse vectors?
Reverse vectors are great. I think the evolution for me was playing, you get a traditional, then, there was the whole thing of reverse vectors. I played around with that. I was like, I think it came back to understanding the actual barbs. If you understand where the barbs are, what you're trying to do with the barbs, as long as you get the lifting portion of the barbs in the area you want to lift, I think it makes sense to do either way. There are some artistic aspects to it. When you go traditional, you're probably going to lift and widen out a little bit versus reverse is kind of going to slim out the face a little bit more so. But ultimately, I think the combination can work very well. My technique is doing a combination. I love the idea of taking tissue and passing it up the face back up, and so that's kind of where I've taken it to. But I think you can utilize longer ones, shorter ones. My personal favorites, the easiest is the Mint Petites. I love the Mint Petites in reverse just because they have a shorter, you could say when you go traditional, they have the shorter lifting portion of it. So when you go in reverse, it has a shorter anchoring portion of it. So that is enough anchoring into the temporofascial area that now I can utilize more of the lifting portion of the barbs. So I think it just comes down to you understanding where the barbs are on your thread and trying to maximize the lifting capacity of it. So if I'm going a longer range, yeah, I probably could use a longer one. But I think you just have to think of the geography of your face and understand there's only so much anchoring that you really need. Is it overly anchored that you're going to lose some of your lifting capacity? And I think this goes into more advanced thought patterns behind that aspect of it. But you can use any thread that, to me, in a reverse vector, if you're just fixating it, you can use the fixes. I think that does a beautiful job. If you're just literally fixing it and trying to get a little bit of movement, but to really lift, if you're trying to lift the face back up, bidirectionals are still my favorite things to use. So I think it's understanding, to me, really going like fillers. I talk about this when I do my trainings, is if fillers have rheology, threads have its, you can say, barbology. And if you don't understand that, you're not going to use your threads to its advantage.
Dr. Cheung, besides north to south vectors and reverse vector threads, they're now what are called fixation threads. These threads essentially fixate the lock into position, theoretically they can increase the longevity and duration of the thread result. Are you, when you're with your patients and you're doing threads on patients, are you using fixation threads? Are you always locking in your vector pattern with fixation? If you can talk about that a little bit.
Yes, so I always love to do my full lift first, and then I take a look. If I'm happy with where the tissue is, I will put my fixation in. I've been crisscrossing my fixation threads over my lifting vectors ever since I've been doing threads, because I think the more thread you use, the more contact points you have between your lifting vectors and your fixation, the more collagen you're going to make. And it was kind of nice to hear Dr. Song talk about that, where you get 5 times the amount of collagen at those contact points. So I think it does help the longevity of your lift. I tell my patients, I'm making a little spider web under your skin, and the more web contacts I have, the better that web will be able to hold on, with this, all the tension in your skin, lift and tighten over time. So big fan of fixations, both Miracu, they have great threads for that.
Francine, again, you've been developing some of the threads for Novathread. Is there anything that's on the horizon of a new thread or a new technology that we all should know about?
I just want to touch on Dr. Jessie. What she was saying is I agree 100% with that. I really like to think about threads as, how plastic surgeons will do like an internal bra. Like I like an internal bra for your face. Having that mesh for your face is incredible. And I was so glad to see Dr. Sung also talk about that as well. In the paper that Dr. Karimi was discussing, that they did the study about, basically it was a basic thread lift. It was like 3 or 4 threads in a traditional vector. The interesting thing is if you apply physics concepts to that paper, which it discussed, and perhaps I can send it to you and you can link it, is the orientation of the threads really mattered. So whether if you were vertical, if you were straight across, or if you had some slant, it made a difference to how the longevity of that thread, because when they took the pictures and the red areas you can see in the studies were the areas of lift, it depended upon the orientation of those threads. So that, yes, the who's doing the threading matters. What type of thread you're using. That's why Dr. Karimi and I developed the Beyond Threads, because it was literally years of complaining. I said, I want this thread, make this thread. So when we did put that thread together, I kept those thoughts in mind, making a mesh in your face, where the direction, using the physics, all of those things play in together. And I think that that's, to your point, Dr. Jessie, that's your point of making an internal mesh for your face. And that's what's going to hold. It's not just the traditional, but it's the reverse. It's, coming and crisscrossing, because we know that from Sculptra is that when you start to make a grid pattern, you're going to make more dense collagen in that area. So same kind of ideology with the threads as well. So yes. And did that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. Dr. Tsay, there are a lot of criticisms from people that threads don't last very long, that the result goes, way quickly. I'm finding with my patients that it's never been the case. My results usually are 9, 12, 18 months based on which, thread vector patterns and stuff I do. I've been trying to visualize our patients with vector Visia, with scanning, with all kinds of stuff. Do you do anything in your practice to basically show evidence that a patient has long-term results? Do you have evidence of long-term results with your patients?
Yeah, so going back a little bit, so when I'm teaching about talking to threads, educating my clients, I can do the whole spiel. Same if I'm teaching a class to thread users, the threads dissolves in months 6 through 8. But there's fibrosis, there's neocollagenesis, there's barbs that are still there that are in place even after the threads are completely absorbed. And also, I think setting the expectations of I tend to underpromise, overdeliver. So I do say it's 9 to 12 months. I hear people say 2 years, and if their threads last a year, they're going to be upset, right? Versus if you tell them 9 months and it lasts a year, then they're happy. And I do use I think imaging is very important. I have a imaging system called Quantificare. It's very, very expensive, but it gives contour elevation. There's a clay model mode where you can see like the shadows and the lights. For my nose lifts, it's really cool. They actually have a calculator that if you look at the nasolabial angle, we want to get that above 95 degrees for women. And so it takes the baseline and it calculates the angle for you. Say, for example, your baseline was 87 degrees, and after the lift, after they've healed 2 weeks later, they come for a follow-up, it's now 96 degrees. It quantifies that angle for you. And so if the patient's like, well, I don't really see a lift, you're like, well, look at that. I mean, this is science. This is an actual measurement of the angle, and you have a lift. And it's, you know, it's not subjective. It's actually very objective. So I think imaging is super important.
Pawnta, when you're doing your threads on patients, I know it's in combination a lot of times with fillers. What comes first? The fillers come first, and then the threads. Do you do the fillers and the threads together? What's your preference in terms of that with your patients?
So yes, I definitely do the combinations when I do the mesh threads from Miracu for the nasal folds. I've done that before, and if the patient is she has a lot of fat loss in the anterior portion, I do some filler and then come in with the threads and lift the gels up. So I don't particularly do the cheeks if I'm doing the filler there, but I can do, if I do mid-face, I can come back down and bring up the gel. So I have done a combination with filler and threads, and they were fine. Great results.
You're on a deserted island, and you have to thread a patient's face so perfectly that your life depends upon it. You can only have one brand of threads with you on the island. What brand is that?
That will be Benev's Miracu.
Okay, Gideon.
Currently, probably mint.
Okay, Dr. Cheung.
Is it the whole product line, mesh fill? Like,
Is it for the vagina or is it for the face?
I don't,
That's what we
right?
want to know.
Yeah, the whole product line from one specific company.
Oh, I mean, that's a hard question, but I think, I would say I reach for my mint. I usually actually combine my threads, multiple brands in one procedure, but I do more mint predominantly. So I would say mint.
Okay, Dr. Tsay.
This is tough. I mean, no face.
It's supposed to be a tough question. It's not supposed to be an easy question.
No pressure.
Miracu doesn't have a nose thread yet. So,
They sent us samples. Did you get the sample of the Novathread?
I got it from Korea 2 years ago. I've been using them actually. One company, right? For the face?
Yeah. Or whatever.
Miracu.
Okay. All right, Pawnta.
Miracu.
Okay, Francine.
You know I'm going to say Novathreads.
You weren't going to say Miracu?
No, it's not. Be nice.
All right. Next question, Yvonne. When you're with a patient and let's say the person they know a little bit about threads, not a lot about threads. You want to convert them into a procedure. You may want to go into the filler route. You may want to go into the thread route, but they're only going to do one. Their budget's only for one. If you could, what would you prefer, to do threads or filler on a patient?
Always threads, because I find that if I thread first, I hardly need any filler after. And they're always doing this, right? They're always doing this. I think that's the majority of this. I myself need that. So I would lean for the threads for sure.
Dr. Kwok?
Oh, right now, currently, probably still threads, but fillers it's definitely needed. I mean, you don't age in only one layer. So, threads, I think majority of patients probably can use it. There's a few times where I've told them no, and it's filler only. And once you do the filler correctly, it looks like they got the thread lift, they got the facelift type of a thing. So I still think that for the majority, if you're talking about it, you can do a lot with your threads.
Dr. Cheung?
Really great question, Scott. I would say threads, because I agree with Yvonne. If you thread first, you don't need as much filler, and you could actually use your threads to create volume, right? We kind of thread that thread back and forth, they make a college of blobs. So I think threads are very versatile.
Dr. Tsay?
Yeah, I say threads because I can't do with fillers what I can do with threads, but I can do with threads what I can do with fillers, and I use the fillers to volumize. There's people that don't want fillers, so I can use a thread and lay the thread back and forth and volumize, And for Francine, I think hopefully when we get PDO powder here, that you won't be putting 100 threads. You could, because I've actually played with that. You can just inject the PDO power and get it's so beautiful. It's such a nice result. You're gonna love it. Like Sculptra, you're gonna love PDO powder. Awesome.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Pawnta?
I would say threads, because again, this goes back to patient education. A lot of people don't know. They think with filler, they're lifting the face. So once you show them those pictures and repositioning the skin and educate them, I would definitely do threads if I had one choice.
Francine?
I think it's going to be, and I get what everybody's saying. I think it has to do with patient tolerance. So there are some patients that you know that if you do threads on them, you are not going to stop getting cold. Okay? I'm just keeping it real. So I think it has to do with the psychology of the patient. Of course, if I had the option and you had a patient that was, you know, very easygoing and didn't have a lot of anxiety, doesn't mind downtime, so on and so forth, yeah, thread them up. I think they will look excellent. You can lift cheeks, you can do so many things. You don't have to blow their face up. But again, it just has to do with patient tolerance and, you know, what are their expectations.
So this final question will be a little controversial, but you know me, I like to create a little controversy. So we'll start with Yvonne. If to me, this group of thread providers is really the best. They're great, you know. But if you could pick one person on the East Coast, you know, Dolce Vita excluded, that you would say is the very best thread provider on the East Coast, in your opinion, who would that be?
Wow. I would probably just go to Jessica, people I know, right? Menges.
Okay, so Injector Jess would be your choice.
Yeah.
Okay, Gideon?
Ooh, I don't know that many people. Probably Lyris.
Okay, Lyris, yep. So Lyris the Thread Slayer. Lyris, I can't say her whole name, Ventura Dominic, right? Is that correct? Yep, okay. Dr. Chung?
Who are the East Coast threaders? Who do you have? Like,
Exactly, that's what I want to know.
I don't know.
We're like,
I mean, besides, like, we love Lyris, we love Injector Deaths, but who else is there who like loves threads?
There's at least 10 of them, and so I would say maybe like 2 or 3 that are well known. The rest are not as well known.
I mean, I agree. Lyris or Jessica are the only ones I've known. I've seen their work in real life.
Okay, Dr. Tsay?
There's a couple of people that I know. There used to be a guy that was really well known in Florida. He's an older doctor. Do you guys know his name?
Dr. Perricone, Gerald Perricone. He was a trader for Mint.
Early Mint trainer.
Yeah.
Is he still around? I mean, he was so innovative. He was so good. Is he still around?
He was a big Mint speaker, and then he kind of fell off the face of the map.
Oh,
but
wow. Right.
But he was a big guy. I think that's who you're talking about.
Is this guy who used to thread himself with the barb threads on? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he was good. I really like watching his videos. I studied, but if he's not active, then Lyris.
Okay, Pawnta?
I mean, I would say Lyris and Jessica. They have their own different ways of doing it, and they're so good at it, both of them. So.
Okay, and Francine?
Not including Scott, right? You said it's not including you.
I excluded myself.
Excluded.
I don't want Lyris and Jessica to beat me on every answer. So I myself on that. And then Francine?
Oh gosh, you know, I actually don't know that many on the East Coast, and I would just have to say I need a consultation. That's my politically correct answer.
Let's see.
I want to say thank you, Scott, for being my dear friend, for teaching me, for empowering me, and for believing in me, and always including me. I love all of you, each and every one of you. I learn from all of you all the time. And I'm in a rural Utah, small, and I see all of you slaying and doing all these amazing things, and I just admire each and every one of you. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Gideon?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be part of this amazing panel. But you know, I think since this is going out to the public, hopefully the practitioners, really, you know, Threads is something here to stay. Jump on the bandwagon, get trained and get retrained and retrained. I think if you really ask all of us it's taken us a lot of trainings to get to where we're at. And so it's not as easy as a filler or a toxin. And I think that's where the frustration comes into it. I mean, we just did a survey from the aesthetic immersion on just some of the students out there, and shockingly, we got a few comments like, "Why do you teach about aging of the face? Can't you just tell us what filler to use and where to inject and how much?" I was like, "Are you serious?" So, the challenge to the providers that really, really want to help the industry grow is to really get good training, practice, do private trainings with any one of these amazing providers, because that's the way you're going to elevate your skill set. And that's what I'm here to do, is really, really keep this aesthetic train rolling so that we can really, really elevate the industry.
Okay, Jessie.
I want to say thank you, Scott, for bringing us all together. And I think it's awesome that you did this. You would think that someone else would have put us all together in one room at some point and have us kind of just do a roundtable and share what we think is best practices or why we do things a certain way. Are the East Coast people doing it differently than we are? I don't know. I don't know, but
Yeah, I'm going to prove that they are, but
we are better, Scott.
I know, I know you think that, and that's good that you think that. But that's what will be so beautiful about this episode.
I don't know. We'll see if they have anything better to say. I mean, I'm kind of in the Midwest, so I go both ways. And actually, I see patients in New York, so I'm kind of East Coast, but I don't even know who's threading on the East Coast. But thank you so much. And threads are awesome. We love them. And I agree with Gideon. Please know what you're trying to do with your threads. I've done trainings where people come in and they just want to know the cookie cutter, approach. And I'm like, do you even do filler? They're like, no. I'm like, well, if you don't know where you want volume to go, where are you going to put your threads? And it's interesting. They think threads are so easy because you can't cause an occlusion. They're very safe, but there's a huge learning curve for threads. So please please train and know what you're doing and know what you're getting into. We love them, but do them the right way.
Dr. Tsay?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you again for bringing this all group. I would love if I was brave enough to get threaded, I would love every one of you guys to thread my face. I'm such a chicken.
DJ, I'll do it for you.
Oh my God, you're baby.
Not just Pronox, I mean, knock me out like Propofol out. Like
Pronox.
I have a wish list. I know, Francine, you're in the development team, and maybe I'll mention this, but if we could come up with a thread that, because they came out and study in Korea. I went to I forgot it was in Thailand or Taiwan, but it's all about how much surface area of the PDO determines the lifting and collagen production. So that's why the mesh is so nice, because it's 16 threads and a mesh. But if you could have a mesh thread with barbs, whoa.
Yeah.
That would be an awesome thread. That would be
a high learning curve. Yes.
That's a high.
I gotta run, guys, to the kids, but I want to thank you so much, Scott, for having me on this panel. I'm honored, and as always, thank you for keeping it real. And I'll see you guys soon.
Bye,
Pawnta.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
I thank Scott for having us all together. I think it's long overdue. I love the fact that there are so many experts on the panel, and everybody is making and elevating the thread game, right? Because when threads first came on, I mean, we still get so much hate from the plastic surgeons. Thank God Dr. Karimi's on board, so he's a nice advocate, because he's sort of the original OG for the threads, which is really nice because he'll come with the studies and all of that and giving it validity. So it's really important that we not compete with each other, but really work with each other, because I know Gideon very well. I know Tsay very well. Amazing practitioners, and you guys elevate Jessie, I've seen you on webinars and things of that nature. Everybody kind of elevates the whole thread game, and that's what it's about, making it valid so that people don't think, oh, threads are, it's just for those people that can't do surgery. I don't want it to be associated with some fringe kind of treatment. I want it to be associated, Botox, neurotoxin, fillers. It should be right along that category. It's just another tool in the toolbox, and it should have that same kind of validity. It should have that same kind of strength that goes into each and every, like if you are in a practice and they don't do threads, you're like, what? Why? That's like not doing Botox. You know what I mean? So I think that's because you guys are all experts in your field. You're really elevating that game and really elevating, bringing the knowledge, especially you Gideon, with your, taking over the world with all your trainings in the whole entire world. So, I mean, with all that being said, like, again, all of you, and not to leave you out, Yvonne, as well, because I know you do amazing trainings as well. I think it's really important that we say nice things. That I really would like a podcast about that, like stop talking trash, don't talk trash about other practitioners, because everyone, like you said, Gideon, or I think you said that, Scott, everybody's kind of really good at something, and bringing that expertise to the game only just elevates, and it all ships rise.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's it. That's the end of this episode. Thank you so much for participating, and I look forward to the final episode.
Yay.
Thanks, Scott.
West Coast rules.
Have a
I know
blessed
West
day.
Coast
Bye.
rules.
Let's go to the house. I don't know.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Scott. Bye.
Bye, Scott.
Unlimited edition.